This is your community radio station, 88.3 Southern FM.
Hello, I'm Andrew Rennie. On the panel today is Richard. There are many events we could mark this week. 65 years ago, on 1961, January the 31st, as part of its preparation to put the first person in space, NASA launched a Redstone rocket on a suborbital flight with a chimpanzee called Ham. Successfully recovered. 60 years ago, on 1966, January the 31st, the Soviet Union launched Luna 9, which a few days later became the first unmanned craft to successfully land on the moon and transmit back pictures from the surface of the moon. 5 years later, on 1972, January the 31st, Apollo 14 was launched on a Saturn V rocket towards the moon. The mission landed 2 men on Frau Moreau. One of them, Alan Shepard, found time to play golf. Well, all of those are worthy of detailed mention. However, we turn our attention to Space Shuttle mission STS-51L. 40 years ago today, Universal Time, after several delays, the 25th Space Shuttle mission lifted off. Its mission was to place the second of NASA's large tracking and data relay satellites into orbit. Also in the cargo bay was Spartan 303, a satellite to study the approaching Halley's Comet. Not that most of the public cared about these. All attention was on the 7th person aboard, schoolteacher Krista McAuliffe. To this day, the doomed flight of STS-51L is known as the Challenger accident, and the crew member they most likely to remember is, of course, Krista. Regular listeners to the Space Show knows that Turn Back Time, our series that we run here, is that most of the audio clips are from reel-to-reel tape recordings that I made of shortwave and local New Zealand radio. However, after STS-1, the first Space Shuttle mission in 1981, I stopped recording. Why, you ask? Because I had a new toy, Video Home System, or VHS. I still continued to listen to shortwave radio as the only way to follow space events live from New Zealand. The STS-51L launch had been delayed from January the 25th to the 26th, to the 27th, and then the 28th. Each night I had stayed up until the wee hours of the morning listening to the Voice of America. So, as January the 28th rolled into the morning of January the 29th, I was very, very tired. So I kept the shortwave radio on my bedside table and laid down to rest. You guessed it, I drifted off to sleep. The Voice of America had some jazz. Not my favourite genre of music, but it was playing anyway. Suddenly, a change in program jolted me awake. It was 3:30 a.m. and the Voice of America had begun its live commentary. I dragged myself out of bed and began taking notes for a magazine that I was editor of. And so it came to pass that I was one of likely very few people in New Zealand to hear live the Challenger disaster. Liftoff came at 3:38 a.m. and the shuttle's external tank exploded 71 seconds later, destroying the Challenger orbiter and killing its crew of 7. At that time in New Zealand, television did not start until mid-afternoon, unlike here in Australia when breakfast television was the thing. On the radio, it was announced that TV1 would come on air at 10:30 a.m. to show the accident and then shut down. It was not until the evening news that most New Zealanders had a chance to see what had happened. Of course, I had my VHS tape recorder ready and running.
Good evening. It was the worst disaster in 25 years of space exploration by the Americans. What appeared to be a routine shuttle mission turned into a nightmare for millions of Americans watching the liftoff on television. And among the viewers, many thousands of school children, excited by the knowledge that in the crew was New Hampshire schoolteacher Krista McAuliffe, the first private citizen to ride the shuttle.
They gathered for what turned out to be their last meal at 6:48 this morning, the ceremonial breakfast. For months, they had trained together. Astronaut Ellison Onizuka from Hawaii, the star of this mission, New Hampshire schoolteacher Krista McAuliffe, mission commander Dick Scobie, pilot Michael Smith, astronauts Judith Resnick and Ronald McNair, and payload specialist Gregory Jarvis. After 3 days of delays, they appeared tired but quickly rejuvenated by applause as they headed for the launch pad.
Scobie, followed by mission specialist Judy Resnick, Ron McNair, and pilot Mike Smith, followed by Krista McAuliffe, teacher in space, and Ellison on the
Team Visual orders Commander Scobie to go to full power.
Challenger, go with throttle up. Challenger, go with throttle up.
Suddenly, an explosion.
Flight controllers here looking very carefully at the situation. Obviously a major malfunction.
NASA loses all communication with Challenger, but the crowd still does not realize that something's gone wrong. Within seconds, Challenger disintegrates.
We have a report from the flight dynamics officer that the vehicle has exploded.
For the spectators and Krista McAuliffe's parents, joy turns to confusion, worry, and a realization of tragedy. The $1.2 billion spaceship, its 7 crew members, and their satellite payload disappear.
The Challenger was about 90 seconds into its flight. It was at an altitude of nearly 17,000 meters, and it was traveling at 3 times the speed of sound. Space officials were today reluctant to pinpoint the cause until they studied the massive information fed back by computers on the spacecraft in the last few moments. But television pictures of the explosion are already being analyzed.
Here you see what they call a nominal ascent. All those words, textbook, picture perfect, and then suddenly a tiny flame just where the fuel lines go from the big external tank into Challenger itself. On the left with the arrow, a plume where gases from the tank are forming, obviously feeding the fire. Now you will see the flame creeping up the external tank in between the tank and the shuttle itself. This is the beginning of the huge catastrophic explosion that absolutely engulfed the entire system. You will see a second explosion right at the top of that big external tank. This is obviously what put the entire thing into flames and probably what destroyed the shuttle almost instantly. Now for a moment the smoke clears and we see emerging apparently the top of Challenger. We think this is the last picture we have ever seen of Challenger before it fell to the sea with its precious cargo. And as the sequence is going to continue, you will see that mammoth, horrible explosion on the right. One of the solid rocket boosters split away now from the tank and the shuttle itself. These boosters cannot be controlled once they're lit, so it has obviously gone off on its own into the wrong place, but it does not appear, I repeat, appear from what we can see that it was the cause of the explosion or that anything happened to it. So that's the sequence. We can see that. We can try to understand it. What we don't know is why it happened, and that's what we now need to find out.
Today's Space Shuttle mission attracted more than usual interest because a civilian was among the crew for the first time. She was 37-year-old Krista McAuliffe, a high school teacher from Concord, New Hampshire.
Krista McAuliffe's students and friends at Concord High School were ready to watch a dream come true this morning. Instead, they became witnesses to a nightmare.
2, 1, and liftoff.
In the moments after the launch, their celebrations drowned out the first news of the tragedy. But the clamor turned to quiet as this picture burned itself into their memories.
Reports from the flight dynamics officer indicate that the vehicle apparently exploded and that impact in the water.
Some people were covering their eyes, and some people were just watching the TV set with a blank look on their face.
It was really quite dramatic. At first, you know, everyone was really happy, all these smiles, and then suddenly you saw a lot of people crying in the halls, and it was really pretty sad.
Now the public celebration had turned into private mourning and shock.
She was a part of us. She was part of a family. and just like if your sister or brother died, she'll be remembered. It was a hell, just a hell.
Though Krista McAuliffe's students and friends have known her here in Concord for years, she became known to the nation when she decided to pursue her dreams. Those dreams had been sparked by President Reagan's announcement a year ago for a teacher astronaut. The search for that history maker brought 11,000 applications, but only one made the final grade.
And the winner, the teacher who will be going into space, Krista McAuliffe.
From the outset, she approached this mission and her training with the same ideals she brought to the classroom.
Well, it was a challenge, and it was something that I always ask my students, to go and seek whatever they feel they can do and reach a little higher.
She wore her spirit on her face, and her hometown loved it.
Difficult to say.
Now they are remembering it. A special counselor will be brought to Concord High tomorrow to help students begin dealing with their loss. But perhaps Krista McAuliffe's own words echo the best advice.
To follow your instincts and go for your dreams, and I hope they achieve that.
Today's disaster stunned the United States, and the Space Shuttle program was immediately suspended. It will not resume until space officials are sure that they know exactly what caused today's explosion. President Reagan took the unprecedented step of postponing his annual State of the Union message and declaring a week of national mourning for the 7 astronauts. But in a speech on network television, he vowed that the space program will continue.
I've always had great faith in and respect for our space program. And what happened today does nothing to diminish it. We don't hide our space program. We don't keep secrets and cover things up. We do it all up front and in public. That's the way freedom is, and we wouldn't change it for a minute. We'll continue our quest in space. There will be more shuttle flights and more shuttle crews, and yes, more volunteers, more civilians, more teachers in space. Nothing ends here. Our hopes and our journeys continue.
New Zealand's Prime Minister has sent a message of sympathy to President Reagan. Mr. Longley says New Zealanders learned of the disaster with great sadness. He said New Zealand salutes the courage of the American astronauts who face danger as they work in space, and New Zealand joins in mourning for the dead.
Coverage of the Challenger disaster 40 years ago on Television New Zealand's Channel 1. Here in Australia, Space Association member Helena Roberts had her video recorder running and was able to capture President Ronald Reagan's speech to the nation.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd planned to speak to you tonight to report on the State of the Union. But the events of earlier today have led me to change those plans. Today is a day for mourning and remembering. Nancy and I are pained to the core by the tragedy of the Shuttle Challenger. We know we share this pain with all of the people of our country. This is truly a national loss. 19 years ago, almost to the day, we lost 3 astronauts in a terrible accident on the ground. But we've never lost an astronaut in flight. We've never had a tragedy like this. And perhaps we've forgotten the courage it took for the crew of the shuttle. But they, the Challenger 7, were aware of the dangers, but overcame them and did their jobs brilliantly. We mourn 7 heroes: Michael Smith, Dick Scobie, Judith Resnick, Ronald McNair, Ellison Onizuka, Gregory Jarvis, and Krista McAuliffe. We mourn their loss as a nation together. To the families of the 7, we cannot bear, as you do, the full impact of this tragedy. But we feel the loss, and we're thinking about you so very much. Your loved ones were daring and brave, and they had that special grace, that special spirit that says, give me a challenge and I'll meet it with joy. They had a hunger to explore the universe and discover its truths. They wished to serve, and they did. They served all of us. We've grown used to wonders in this century. It's hard to dazzle us. But for 25 years, the United States space program has been doing just that. We've grown used to the idea of space, and perhaps we forget that we've only just begun. We're still pioneers. They, the members of the Challenger crew, were pioneers. And I want to say something to the school children of America who were watching the live coverage of the shuttle's takeoff. I know it's hard to understand, but sometimes painful things like this happen. It's all part of the process of exploration and discovery. It's all part of taking a chance and expanding man's horizons. The future doesn't belong to the faint-hearted. It belongs to the brave. The Challenger crew was pulling us into the future, and we'll continue to follow them. I've always had great faith in and respect for our space program, and what happened today does nothing to diminish it. We don't hide our space program. We don't keep secrets and cover things up. We do it all up front and in public. That's the way freedom is, and we wouldn't change it for a minute. We'll continue our quest in space. There will be more shuttle flights and more shuttle crews, and yes, more volunteers, more civilians, more teachers in space. Nothing ends here. Our hopes and our journeys continue. I want to add that I wish I could talk to every man and woman who works for NASA or who worked on this mission and tell them your dedication and professionalism have moved and impressed us for decades, and we know of your anguish. We share it. There's a coincidence today. On this day, 390 years ago, the great explorer Sir Francis Drake died aboard ship off the coast of Panama. In his lifetime, the great frontiers were the oceans, and a historian later said he lived by the sea, died on it, and was buried in it. Well, today, we can say of the Challenger crew, their dedication was, like Drake's, complete. The crew of the Space Shuttle Challenger honored us for the manner in which they lived their lives. We will never forget them, nor the last time we saw them, this morning, as they prepared for their journey and waved goodbye and slipped the surly bonds of earth to touch the face of God. Thank you.
And just one little niggle point. Events in space or towards space are logged in universal time. So the Challenger was launched in January the 28th, which is today, in universal time and in American time as well. But here in Australia and in New Zealand, it was in the wee hours of the morning of January the 29th. And of course, we found out about it here, as I've explained, on January the 29th.
This is your community radio station, 88.3 Southern FM.
We're listening to the Space Show, and today we are remembering the Challenger crew and the accident that killed them. Just a point of note, they did not get into space. A commercial airliner flies at about 10 kilometres altitude. They were about 1.5 times that altitude, so nowhere near in space, but they were heading that way. Howard Nemerov is a well-known and very popular American poet. He has written this about the STS-51L Challenger disaster. It's called On an Occasion of National Mourning.
Of course, the other time I'd considered on my own without being commissioned by NASA, naturally, when it didn't work so good, called On an Occasion of National Mourning. And you saw it all many times, as everyone did. On an occasion of national mourning. It is admittedly difficult for a whole nation to mourn and be seen to do so, but it can be done. The silvery platitudes were waiting in their silos for just such an emergent occasion. Cards of sympathy from heads of state were long ago prepared for launching and are bounced around the world from satellites at near the speed of light. The divine services are telecast from the hometowns. Children are interviewed and say politely, gravely, how sorry they are. And in a week or so the thing is done. The sea gives up its bits and pieces, and the investigating board pinpoints the cause by inspecting bits and pieces. Nothing of the sort can ever happen again. The prescribed course of tragedy is run through, omen to amen, as in a play, the nation rises again, reborn of grief, and ready to seek the stars, remembering the shuttle, forgetting the loom.
The Challenger tribute song was written by Stephen Kay about 2 days after the disaster, but was not published or released. In 1986, Stephen Kay was a singer, and then he went on to become a music programmer. The original song was called The Challenger, Where No One's Gone Before. Well, he recorded this for the 25th anniversary of STS 51L accident on 2011, January the 28th. Here's Stephen Kay.
T-minus 15 seconds. T-minus 10. We have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission.
That was Stephen Kay, recorded in 2011. We have more coming up shortly.
This is your community radio station, 88.3 Southern FM.
We're listening to the Space Show, and today we are remembering the Challenger crew and the accident that killed them. In the wake of the tragedy, a number of funds were set up. One of them was called the Challenger 7 Fund. It had an official song called Starship Fly On, and it was written in 1986 and is performed here by Jerry Dyke, D-Y-C-K-E.
Coming up on the 5-minute point, this is a major milestone where we go for auxiliary power unit starts. T-minus 5 minutes.
The morning air was cold on a January day. The blue sky watched in silence as the starship sailed away. And 7 songs were playing, and 7 hearts were won, and mystery put on its mask as 7 songs were sung.
6. We have main engine start.
Starship fly on, sail away.
1. And liftoff.
On the wings in our minds,
Space Shuttle mission has cleared the tower.
To a world of hope and peace, where war and hunger cease. Starship fly on, sail away. Oh, blue sky, will you tell us any secrets you can share, where you help us find the answer for all the brave who dare. Let the ocean be a pillow in all its unknown deep, for 7 songs still ringing and 7 souls that sleep. Starship fly on, sail away.
Engines beginning throttling down now.
In our minds fly away.
Most of the flight, 104%.
To a world of hope and peace, where war and hunger cease. Starship fly on, sail away. Your destination, let 7 voices sing. Send back the word and tell us of joy that peace can bring. Oh, Captain, will you guide us till all the wars are gone? And teacher, will you teach us exactly how it's done? Starship fly on, sail away. Wings in our minds fly away to a world of hope and peace, where war and hunger cease. Starship fly on, sail away. Starship fly on, sail away. On the wings in our minds fly away. Where war and hunger cease. Starship fly on, sail away. Starship fly on, sail away.
Well, this has been the Space Show. I'm Andrew Rennie. Don't forget we have a website, which is space.southernfm.com.au, and also the Space Association is at space.asn.au.